Hello, my name's Al and today I'm going to show you how to replace your press fit bottom bracket. The tools you're going to need are a bottom bracket preload cap tool for Shimano cranks in this instance, Allen keys, a new press fit bottom bracket or bearings, some Loctite, some isopropyl alcohol, some rags or paper towels, a punch or a bottom bracket bearing removal tool, some grease, a torque wrench, a soft-faced and a metal hammer, and some kind of bearing press to press in a new bottom bracket or new bearings. To get to the bottom bracket, we first of all need to remove the chain set. It's a Shimano chain set, so it's a super easy job. We've covered this before, but here's a quick rundown. I'm going to undo the pinch bolts on the left-hand crank arm. Undo them bit by bit. Once they're loose, flip up the security tab, which sits in between the pinch bolts, and remove the preload collar using your BB preload collar tool. With that out of the way, the left-hand crank arm should simply pull free. To remove the rest of the chain set, use a soft face mallet and tap the axle through the BB and remove from the drive side. The bottom bracket that we're removing from this Oro Gold is a press fit 30 bottom bracket, not to be confused with BB 30. So that's a 46mm diameter BB shell. There's two parts to the BB. Each part has a spacer on the end. That reduces down to a 24mm, so you can fit a Shimano axle. First of all, I'm going to show you how to replace the bearing, and then I'll show you how to replace the whole bottom bracket assembly. So first of all, we're going to remove the reducers from the BB. So you're going to need a punch and a metal hammer, and you're going to insert your punch through the BB shell. So your punch is contacting the reducer, and then we're just going to tap it out of its place. Like so. And that will give us access to the bearing. Repeat for the other side. Next up, we're going to remove the bearing only. So using either one of these mini BB rocket tools or your punch again, then we're going to make sure we're only contacting the bearing, and we're going to tap it out of the BB assembly. Probably a good idea to wear some eye protection at this stage, and beware because the bearing could come out at some speed. It isn't possible to replace the bearings in all bottom brackets, but if you're able to pop the bearing out and replace it with a new one, then we're just going to simply press a new one into place. It's a good idea to use some Loctite on the bearing, some strong bearing fit Loctite to help hold it in place and reduce any creaks. And it's simply a case of pressing the bearing into place like so. Turn the press until the bearing bottoms out on its seat. Don't tighten it any further. Sometimes it's easier just to replace the whole bottom bracket assembly rather than the bearings. If you're going to do that, you're going to need to punch out the whole lot. So take your punch and your hammer, and taking care not to damage obviously the frame itself, including the BB shell. So it's going to be a time-consuming process. The punch is probably going to take the plastic cups out in several pieces, so as the punch goes through, be careful not to gouge it into the metal or the carbon of the frame. So here's the old bottom bracket. It came out fairly easily in the end. Just need to clean the BB shell, and we need to decide, depending on how hard it was to remove, i.e. how tight a fit it was, and also dependent on the manufacturer's instructions. So whatever they recommend, whoever makes your frame, and also the BB is going to determine how you fit your new BB. If your bottom bracket was very hard to remove, i.e. a really tight fit, then you may want to fit your new bottom bracket with some grease. However, do not do this if you have a carbon BB shell. On this frame, we have an alloy shell, so you're able to use grease if you wish. If the bottom bracket came out relatively easily, then something like some Loctite 243 would be a good idea, just to help to hold it in place. If it came out very easily, then you may want to increase the strength of the Loctite. Use some bearing fit Loctite perhaps, say some 290 or even stronger, and that will help hold the bottom bracket in place and also reduce the amount of creaking. If your bottom bracket is really loose, or the manufacturer recommends this, then you may use epoxy to fit your bottom bracket. However, this isn't something that we would recommend because removal is an absolute nightmare. Whatever you choose to do, give the bottom bracket shell a good clean with some IPA. If you are fitting using Loctite or epoxy, you're going to want to make sure this is absolutely spotless. The fit of the bottom bracket that we have here is really good, so we don't need to glue it in or anything like that. So we're just going to use a little bit of grease first of all on the O-ring, which seals the two halves of the bottom bracket when it goes together, just to help keep any moisture out. And then we're going to put a small smear of grease on the inside of the BB shell. To fit our BB, we've got a Park HHP3 tool, and we also have adapters on there which will fit our bottom bracket. So that's the non-drive side of the press fit BB. Doesn't actually matter which side they go with this particular bottom bracket. Just wind the bottom bracket into place, make sure everything's properly aligned, and make sure it's going to go in perfectly straight. And then we're just pressing the bottom bracket into the BB shell. Don't use excessive force. When you feel it bottom out or see it bottom out, that's enough. You don't need to put a lot of force through the handles. All that will do is damage the bearings or the plastic cups. Once it's in place, just remove the tool. Before we fit a chain set, we're going to give it a good clean. So clean the axle and the non-drive side crank arm. Make sure that those splines are free from any dirt. And we're also going to clean our preload cap. And then apply some grease to the axle. This will help the axle to go through the bottom bracket. So position the chain so the axle goes through it, and pass the axle through the drive side bottom bracket cup. It should push easily into place, like so. We're going to give it a little tap with our soft face mallet. just to make sure it's all home. Fit your left-hand crank arm. It's impossible to fit that incorrectly due to the spine configuration. Screw the preload cap into place and set the preload. We do that by tightening the tool and the cap fully and then backing it right off and literally finger and thumb just to apply a little bit of preload to the bearings. Fit the safety tab into place by pushing it down and use your torque wrench set to 13 Newton meters to alternatively tighten the 2 pinch bolts. That should be it. Bottom bracket should be spinning away nicely. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.